Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I make for Sophy Liu as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, it is our first of these reviews. Apparently there I am. It's the first of these reviews that I'm doing for Sophy. This is a song from an act named Led Zeppelin titled 10 Years Gone, and we're going to listen through it from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it. What do we have? Really fascinating motif at this point. Sense of sadness in it though. Okay. It's just testament to the skill of these songwriters that they can keep a bass and guitar theme keeping going for like a minute with various different concepts, stitch them together, and it'd be just as entrancing as if they'd had vocals. And returning to that motif.
As it was, then again it will be. Though the course may change sometimes, rivers always reach the sea.
And drums back again.
Blind skies of fortune, each have separate way. On the wings of maybe, downy birds of prey. Kinda makes me feel sometimes getting tired to go. But as an eagle leaves the nest, got so far to go.
The lyrics are kind of interesting. I'm not sure I get it yet. I'm hoping I get more context as we go along. But I appreciate the tone of the recording as well as how much is going on with the drums without overplaying.
Changes fill my time, baby, that's alright with me. In the midst I think of you and how it used to be.
Cool face to that guitar. Have they got a shuffle going on with the rides there? The dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. That's kind of dope. It's very subtle. It's the power of ghost notes, man. It adds a lot of texture to it. A lot of depth. Fantastic guitar tone. Also, that vocal fry there was stunning, wasn't it?
surprise to me. Never thought I'd see your face the way it used to be. Oh, darling. Oh, darling. Oh.
Such a charming guitar riff, though, the harmonies, right?
Oh, darling. Hey, yeah. Oh, darling. I'm never gonna leave it. I'm never gonna leave it. Taking us going, holding on. Taking us going, holding
And that was 10 Years Gone by Led Zeppelin. Crazy. I'm gonna have a think about this track, and then we're gonna talk about it more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an act named Led Zeppelin titled 10 Years Gone, which I should note is the 1990 remaster. Now, what do I think this track is about? This one, I'm a little bit unsure about. I think that I get impressions of them like dreaming of someone's face and like wondering why they went to where they are. You get the impression that maybe they were thinking about someone they met a while ago. And they might have had something special at that point. It might have been like a one-off thing. Maybe it was like a relationship they had or something like that. And I think they regret the fact that they had to break up. And so you're ultimately left with a situation where I think they're sort of being a little bit poetic about it and was reminiscing about it and trying to sort of like be a bit more sort of blunt about, you know, where they've gone, etc. That's my kind of take on it. I think that a lot of people, it will relate in the sense that we often think about people we used to date or we used to have a connection with at the very least. Or it could be a family member who passed away, you know? And so, like, it can be really brutal for people and a very sort of, like, vivid sort of thing to remember. So I think for some people, this would be quite an intense sort of, like, the relatability will be quite high. And I think that there'll be an audience for this track. I mean, it clearly is. I mean, well, for one, we've gotten it requested via a patron video from Sophie. So thanks again for that. So it's a great song. I think the story is really compelling. I need to listen through to sort of, like, feel it out. But I think this track, the vocals from Robert Plant, if I'm not mistaken, were tremendous there. It's a very sort of expressive performance in the sense that, like, there's a lot of variety to it. At the starting points there with the low-key kind of like guitar and bass parts there, things like build up a little bit. You get the vocals eventually after like the first minute or so, and we start telling the story there, but it's very quiet in the mix. It's very kind of like timid, almost like we're kind of like starting to work ourselves up to sort of crying out like we do later on there. We have really interesting vocal melodies throughout there. We change the way we interact and communicate with the listener as time goes on there to express different parts differently. And we show our full vocal range there. And I like the legato passages and the bits of vibrato that we have there. There's even a bit of vocal fry occasionally where things get a bit raw and sort of gritty there. I appreciate that as well. It's clear they're expressing themselves, how they feel. It's very believable. And ultimately, it's just a really effective performance there. It's clearly a singer who knows exactly the kind of tale they want to tell and knows exactly how to handle and tick all the boxes. And I think with the vocals sorted, it's just the rest of the track, where the song is 6:31, right? That's not a short track. That's quite a lot. Like, it's way outside the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot I usually have for songs. But with that said, I think part of what works really well for this song in particular is that it's well written in terms of like the bass, guitar, and the drum parts there. I don't think we had other instruments there. We have what effectively, I don't think it's a through composed piece. I think that we did have like returns to like different verses and choruses and stuff like that, if I'm not mistaken. But it almost feels like one because of the fact that there's not as much of a focus on actually telling a story. Like the first minute or so, for example, is like the guitar and bass. So you start with that, and the bass kind of plays off of the guitar. There might be a bit of call and response. Then they're sort of niched together with the drums with a bit of a build before we come in with the next verse part. So they're sort of alluding to the fact it's going to get a bit more sort of like intense later on. We build a little bit, then we come back down. It's playing with the listener's expectations there, both dynamically and in regards to the overall intensity there. It lets you in, but not too much. So I think with that, in mind there, we have a piece that effectively amounts to an exploration of this topic lyrically, whilst also building on the guitarist. Because there were interesting chord progressions at the start that we had some majors and minors on the guitar, because I'm going to talk about the guitar part there. I think that the guitars explored major and minor triads there with some interesting arpeggios. We also did some extensions there that kind of cascaded really neatly alongside everything else, and it was just very beautiful and luxurious. It was very well thought out and planned. There were no off notes. There might have been some chromatics there to work with the bluesy sort of pentatonic increments, but I think ultimately there it was a track where it was trying to be a little bit sort of tender, and I think they managed to pull that off. The fuzzy kind of guitar tones were a nice contrast to that, but they're never too overwhelming or heavy. And I appreciate the fact we didn't go too intense with it. I think it would have been a little bit too sort of raucous for the tone of the track lyrically, if anything else. Not that I'm going to tell them how to write music, of course, but you know what I mean. I think that when we build ourselves up into our lead sections there and we add extra guitar layers on top there in the mid to high range and the higher parts of the fretboard there, it's effective because we have a song that allows Jimmy Page to really express himself as a lead player. We have, again, like the phrasings of bluesy pentatonics there, and we explore them really sort of like neatly. We have some parallel majors and minors potentially in the harmonies there, and we work well within the scales and modes associated with that, but it's not like it's a jazzy performance there. It's rock, and I think ultimately he stays within the boundaries, not overplaying, still keeping the singer as the focal point, but allows himself to make the most of the room that he's been given. The bass player is tremendous. I like the fact that we didn't just play the root notes. We also did stuff with the within the scale shapes associated with the root notes of those chords there. We explored a little bit. We kept up a great sense of rhythm with the drums, which we'll talk about in a moment. And ultimately, yeah, it's just a really well thought out piece of music there that's satisfying with the bass as well. They keep it, they're both, the guitarist and bass are both very competent. I'm not sure if there was another guitarist in Led Zeppelin. I apologize if there was. I feel ignorant. But either way, the guitars and bass were dope, and they segged well and niche well together, and the bass was there when it needed to be, and it wasn't when it didn't. And I appreciate the fact we had that self-control there and restraint. The drums as well they pocketed when they needed to, with these interesting ghost note sort of ride patterns that I especially enjoyed there. We knew to be quiet sometimes and add a little bit of extra texture there in a way that was sort of like a sub-layer there, and add a very mature level of composition to it. I think that was great. The drums there, with a thorough examination of the drum kit, with a great sort of like, is it like a triplet feel to it? A triplet feel to it? I think there was overall sort of like a triplet groove to it, or at least like a down da 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 down da 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 da. No, it was eighth notes. It was eighth notes. It was 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Or was that 16s? 1E and a 2E and a 3E. I'm not sure, but either way, it was sensational there. We had a great sense of pace there. You could tell they just really understood how to play the drums and didn't. They kept in time there. And ultimately, yeah, there was a lot of variety to the different drum fills and ideas there without overplaying again. The key of this is providing interesting things to listen to that niche well with the other instruments there. They're professional musicians. They know what they're doing. It's great. So we had great performances all around. The theme, it sounded like it was almost a bittersweet experience. Like, we were happy that we could remember the face there with like some of the major intonations and stuff like that. And the guitar harmonies later on that were in that sort of major sense there, it almost seemed like we were happy to have had that person. We weren't ready to let that person go there. I'm wondering if the evolution of the story is that we found this person we were dreaming of or something like that, or that we were happy that we weren't going to let that memory of them go. In which case, I think that was a really beautiful idea there. But I just, again, like the major, it's bittersweet at the start because I don't think we'd gotten to the point where we realized we could remember them. And so that's very symbolic of that evolution there thematically. We found places in the stereo field and frequency spectrum from an arrangement perspective for everything to sort of fit in there. I like the coloration within the piece in a whole there. Lots of different ideas for chords and melodies that really suit there, with a great sense of variety with the percussion. And yeah, just to iterate, I think that the theme is one where like it's kind of, there's a duet, like this, it's a two-parter basically. The first part is kind of low-key and sort of like tender, and the low mids, because we're kind of coming up from having lost that person and kind of realizing that, and eventually moving to a point where we can really sort of like continue to cherish them. That's what I got from the track there with those major ideas, the solo sections and stuff later on. I think it's a really well-written piece that makes the most of its runtime. And the studio recording, mixing, and mastering as a final note is splendid. It's splendid. I think I appreciate most of all the fact that it retained, the 1990 remaster retains the tone of the original version. It does sound like it was recorded in like the 70s or 60s or 70s there with the drum tones, guitars and stuff. but it does so in a way. It doesn't like diminish it, but it's also like kind of sounds. How do I describe it? It sounds like a 1990s like album, but that was done in the 70s. Like we had slightly better technology at that point. Potentially an understatement, depending on how you see it. But I think that if we'd sort of over-polished it or over-sterilized it would have lost a lot of its magic there. You have a great sort of combination. Like, for instance, the dynamic range of the vocals, they were quiet, but if you tried to put them up too much, it would have kind of like scattered the mix a little bit. If you'd over-compressed the vocals, it might have seemed like you were trying to make a dance track or something like that. So I think ultimately the dynamic range was welcome. It seemed more like a studio or live performance together where they're all in the same room. The guitars, bass, and drums were niched really well in the frequency spectrum as well as in the stereo field there. Things are nice and wide in the headphones as well as like well balanced in that front. And again, it was nice now without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. Effectively, this is a fantastic song, and I'm really glad I had the chance to listen to it. So thank you very much for watching my review of this track from an act named Led Zeppelin titled 10 Years Gone, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time. It's the hell more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I will catch you in the next SC Patrons video. Spiderhands out.